Alright, welcome everyone to another coffee tasting. I'm your host, Aaron Taylor, and today we are tasting a brand new Reserve coffee that I have never seen before. Today we are tasting the Colombia Finca La Reserva, and with this particular cup of coffee, we're getting notes of red grape, mandarin, and dark chocolate. This is a really smooth, clean cup of coffee. I like it a lot, and then the story we're about to learn about this coffee is really cool. Inspiring about how we can give back to the land that we harvest from, and making sure that the planet is a safe and healthy planet for the future generations. So this is a very inspiring coffee on what we can do to help our environment, not with just the plant and wildlife, but with just each other as a community. And so that's what makes these Reserve coffees so important, is the fact that they are small lot coffees. They all have their own very distinct story to tell about their community and how they give back to the environment and make it a more sustainable future, not for just themselves, but for future generations as well. And so coffee plays a major part in making sure that we are going into a greener world, more sustainable and economically friendly, making sure that everyone has a sustainable wage and can live a healthy lifestyle without impacting the environment around them. And so with small lot coffees, we really get to learn those stories about where the coffee comes from, how it got there, and then really how these small lot coffees impact the farmers and the area that they come from. So the community and the environment are heavily impacted by the coffee that they get, and by switching from crops that might not be as sustainable as other crops and switching over to coffee, making a more sustainable lifestyle, making it easier to make a little bit more money, and then those crops are a little bit more healthy and the land is healthier because you can put the coffee back into the ground and make for more fertile soil. So for those of you guys who are joining me for the coffee tasting for the first time, welcome. I am honored to have you guys here. And for those of you guys who are returning, welcome back. If you haven't had a chance to hit that like and subscribe button down below, please hit that like and subscribe button. It really allows me to help build and grow this channel, creating more content for you guys, allowing me to do more things. So thank you all for hitting that like and subscribe button. And now we're going to get to the coffee tasting. So with the coffee tasting that we do here, we like to brew our coffee 3 different ways. That way we really get to explore the different flavor profiles that each coffee has to offer. And so with each different brew method, we're going to get different flavor profiles depending on what that coffee has to offer. So with the pour over, we're not getting as much of the oils, and we are getting a little bit of the sediments in the regular pour over. In the Chemex, we have a little bit thicker paper filter, and it's a triple paper filter. So we're filtering out a lot more of those oils and a lot more of those sediments. So it's going to die down the flavor a little bit more, but we're going to get a very clean, balanced cup of coffee. With the French press, we're getting sediment heavy and all the oils. So with the more sediments and the more oils, we're going to get a lot more flavor. Those flavor notes are going to be turned way up. We're still going to get that balanced, smooth cup of coffee, but we're just going to have those flavor notes turned up. So that's what makes the Chemex and the French press different. We're going to get very similar flavor profiles. It's just this one, the flavor profile is going to be much more tame, while this one we're going to get a lot more of those flavor notes. Really, really good. So a lot of people always ask me what's the best brewing method, and there really is no best brewing method. It all depends on the flavor that you're trying to go for. So each different brew method is going to attribute to different flavors. So if you like a nice florally, bright, citrusy cup of coffee, you would probably want to go for the pour over because we're getting a little bit more oils and sediments. And with those more oils, it's going to impact those bright flavors that we get, especially those citrusy flavors or those floral notes that we get in a good cup of coffee. If you do like a more balanced cup of coffee, you like to taste more of those earthy or bitter milk chocolate notes, then I would definitely go for like the French press or the Chemex, because it allows us to get more of those sediment flavors. With those sediment flavors, that impacts the bold flavors like the earthy, milk chocolate, those bitters. And so with the Chemex and the French press, we're getting a little bit more of those bitter flavors. We're still getting those citrus notes that we would normally get from the pour over, but you don't taste them as much because we're getting more of those bitters. So the contrast is evening out between the different flavors. You get a much more even, smoother cup of coffee. So the reason why I like to brew my coffee 3 different ways is because I want to explore the different flavor notes that we get from each different brewing method. It's very important because you might have a cup of coffee you might not have liked, but it might be because of the brew method, because the brew method is going to change the flavor of the coffee substantially. And then also making sure that you get the proportion, grind, and freshness right for each different brew method is important too. Because if you brew a Chemex on a pour over setting, you're going to slow down the brew process so much that you're going to end up with a super bitter cup of coffee. So making sure that we get the proper grind for the right brew setting is very important to making sure that you get the proper flavor that the farmers want you to taste. And that's important because making sure that we taste the coffee that our farmers want us to taste is how we tribute drinking our cup of coffee to the farmers who put a lot of work into growing the coffee. So that's something that we do as baristas, and then even as customers, making sure that we properly get our coffee the way it's supposed to be tasted so that we can pay homage to the people who put a lot of work into making sure that we can have this gourmet cup of coffee. Super good. So we're going to start off the tasting with the pour over. The pour over is the fastest of the brew times. And so with each of these brew methods, they are going to distribute a different amount of serving size. With the pour over, we're just doing a single serving cup of a 16-ounce cup of coffee. With the Chemex, we're getting around a 20-ounce cup of coffee or around 12 ounces. And then same thing with the French press, we're getting around 2 12-ounce servings. So we're getting a little bit more servings than a normal pour over, but we are using more grinds and more water as well. So it doesn't necessarily have more caffeine, but you are getting a bigger serving with a Chemex and a French press. So with this cup of coffee, immediately right off the bat, I'm getting those red grape notes, and then we're getting that subtle, bright mandarin flavor on the sides of our tongue. But we're immediately hit with those red grape notes, and you can taste the red grape notes because it's a darker citrus flavor. It's not as bright as like an orange or a lemon would be. It's got a more subtle, bright, darker flavor. When you eat an orange, you get like a bright citrusy notes. With this, we're getting more subtle citrus notes, not as intense and not as bright as what you would get from like orange or a lemon. And then as the red grape notes start to wash away, we are left with like that dark chocolate mouthfeel towards the center of our tongue. Really, really good. Really smooth. Really, really smooth for a pour over. I tend to lean away from the pour overs just because we are getting a lot of those heavy, bright citrusy notes. And with those bright, heavy citrusy notes, I tend to lean away from those because I like the milk chocolate or the nutty notes that we get in like a good Latin American coffee. But with the pour over, we're getting a lot of those citrus notes that really come forward. And so that's why I tend to lean more towards like a French press or the Chemex, because we get a lot more of those milk chocolate, nutty, earthy notes. So with the Chemex is going to be a slightly coarser grind than the pour over. We have about 10 more grams of coffee, 15 grams more coffee added to the Chemex than the pour over, and then we are doing a 20-ounce serving of water as well. So with this, we are doing about 1.5 times the amount of servings as a regular 16-ounce cup of coffee pour over. So with the Chemex, we aren't getting as intense of the red grape note. With the red grape on the pour over, it was like what we were initially tasting like right off the bat. And then with this, we're getting a little bit more of a subtle, not so intense flavor that you would get from the pour over. With the pour over, that red grape citrus flavor is a little bit overwhelming. It's still fairly subtle, but it's not extremely intense like it would get in like the pour over. So now we're going to try the French press. With the French press, it is going to be the coarsest grind, and we're getting the most amount of water out of this one, and it's going to be one of the longer brew times out of them. So with this, because the coarse grind is longer, we're extracting more flavors, but then also at the same time, there's less surface area in a coarse grind, so there's not as much surface area being brewed on, and it has the longest submersion time with the coffee. So it's allowing for different flavors to come through. With the French press, we're getting more sediment flavors and a lot more oils. And what that's going to do is that's going to impact the flavor of the coffee. It's going to be very similar to the Chemex, but those flavor notes going to be turned way up. And so with this one, we're going to get a sediment heavy with bright floral notes, and it's going to be very intense in flavor. So that's very interesting. So the flavor is very similar to the Chemex, but we're getting slightly different flavor notes. With the French press, we're getting a little bit more of that mandarin flavor. So with this, we're getting a lot more of that red grape, subtle citrus flavor. While this, we're getting that intense, more of a citrusy, bright flavor from the French press. So what that is we're getting a lot more of those oils. The submersion time is allowing for more of those oils to come out in flavor. And what's also nice too is the mandarin flavors, they're not as bright as a regular orange, so it's not as intense. But because it's on a French press, we are getting a lot of those heavy sediments. And with those heavy sediments, it helps wash that mandarin away. And we're getting a nice dark chocolate mouthfeel after that mandarin kind of clears from the palate. All right, that was really good. I really like the French press. It's kind of like a battle between the French press and the Chemex for me. I do like that subtle mandarin flavor because it's not as intense as like a regular orange or like a lemon citrus like zest flavor. So we do get that citrus notes, but it's not as intense as some other coffees. And then because we get like that dark chocolate mouthfeel, it really washes that mandarin flavor away really well. And we're left with a really smooth, bitter cup of coffee. So with the Chemex, we're getting smooth red grape notes, and with the French press, we're getting some really strong mandarin flavor. That is really good. I really like that mandarin flavor. It's interesting to say because a lot of my coffee tastings, when we do the French press and the Chemex versus each other, we end up with flavor profiles that are very, very similar. We get a lot of the same flavors. It's just on a different flavor scale. So with the French press, it tends to be a little bit more flavorful than the French press, even though we're getting the same flavor notes. But with this particular blend of coffee, the Chemex brings out more of those red grape notes, while the French press brings out more of those mandarin notes. So depending on what you like, if you like a little bit more of those citrus notes, I would definitely go for the French press. If you like a little bit more of a mellow citrus flavor, like a red grape, then definitely go for the Chemex. Really nice and smooth, very clean cup of coffee. I think I'm going to stick with the French press, just because I do like that mandarin flavor better than I do like that red grape. And so with the mandarin flavors coming forward a little bit more in the French press, this is going to be my preferred brew to brew the Colombia Finca La Reserva. Awesome. So now that you guys know what my favorite coffee is, or my favorite brew method for this particular cup of coffee, now we're going to talk a little bit about the Colombia Finca La Reserva. With the Colombia Finca La Reserva, obviously it's from the country of Colombia. And so with this cup of coffee, it's actually dedicated to making a sustainable environment for all of the wildlife and plants that grow in this area. And so with this particular farm, half of its hectares are dedicated to a natural preserve. And so what they do is they are dedicated to having the birds work alongside the farmers. So the birds, they eat the seed, help spread the seed, and then also they eat the bugs too. And so what they're doing is the birds help pollinate the plants in the area, and then they help clean the rivers as well. So the farmers and the nature wildlife is kind of like working in tandem with each other to create an environment that is sustainable and that where not just humans can thrive, but nature itself. So it's really cool. This particular farm, it's really dedicated to showing how coffee can create a sustainable environment, how we can use coffee to put it back into the ground to make more fertile land and really help nature grow alongside us instead of kind of pushing nature away or pushing it off to the side and creating more land for ourselves. This goes to show that we can share the land with nature itself and then work cooperatively to create a sustainable farm. Because what we don't realize is a lot of these creatures, the birds and the animals that live on these farms and stuff like that, they do natural pruning and they do natural like pesticide things where, like, you know, the birds will eat the invasive bugs or any of the bugs that might eat the trees. So there's a balance to it all. You know, the birds make sure that the trees are healthy so the bugs have a place to return, and then the bugs return so that the birds continuously eat. And so there's this continuous cycle of the birds continuously taking care of the trees, the bugs help pollinating the different plants, and all of it creates a sustainable cycle so that the environment can thrive and create this delicious cup of coffee that we have here. And so that's one of the cool parts about drinking the small lot coffees, is we get to learn the specific stories of where the coffee comes from, learn a little bit about the farmers and how it impacts the environment. And so with this cup of coffee, it's dedicated to learning how we can give back to the environment and help the environment grow alongside what we do as human beings. We don't have to be invasive ourselves. We can help nature grow alongside us, and then also have nature help us make our product better by letting nature do its thing, what it normally does, and, you know, prune the plants, eat the bugs, all that type of stuff. So it's kind of cool to learn how the farmers in Colombia are really using nature to help themselves grow a better cup of coffee, more flavor, and just create that gourmet cup of coffee for all of us. And for us to learn the story of the farmers and learn where the coffee comes from and how much work that goes into creating a gourmet cup of coffee is just to help you be inspired by the cup of coffee that you drink, not just at Starbucks, but anywhere. Any cup of coffee that you drink is going to have a lot of work that puts into it, a lot of dedication, and each and every farmer does what they do to bring out certain flavor notes in their coffee so that the drinker of the coffee can enjoy those specific flavors. And then learning the different brew methods that we have here is key to learning how we can extract the certain flavor notes that we want to taste from our coffee. So if you like a nice, bold, citrusy cup of coffee, I would go for the pour over. If you like a more balanced cup of coffee, French press. And if you like a more balanced cup of coffee but more mellow notes, I would definitely go with the Chemex. So super cool. I hope I inspired you guys in learning a little bit more about creating the sustainable environment through growing coffee and how we can do that, and how farmers are creating a sustainable lifestyle and helping their environment that they come from to create a more positive and green future, not just for themselves, but for their future generations. So thank you everyone for joining. If you guys liked, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button down below. If you guys want to join me this Tuesday, I will be trying one of the Stump Downs coffee, the Suke Kuto iced with some sparkling water. That one we're getting some lemon lime zest notes, so we're going to see if we can help bring out some of those lemon lime notes with the sparkling water, almost give it like a Sprite coffee feel. So go ahead and join me this Tuesday as we explore another locally sourced coffee. And thank you all for joining today's coffee tasting. I hope you guys all learned a little bit, and I hope this inspired you to have a little bit more passion about the cup of coffee that you drink in your hand, and maybe even learn about the cup of coffee that you have in your hand right now if you haven't learned about it. So if you guys want to learn a little bit more about coffee and the different coffees that we serve, go ahead and hit the link down below. That is going to be a list of videos that I have done in the past. And then the video above is going to be a list of videos that YouTube thinks that you might like. Thanks again, everyone, for joining me on today's live stream. Have a great day, and I will see you Tuesday.